Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Iron Canon podcast, your home for in-depth discussion on the lore, the High Republic, and the whole canon of the galaxy far, far away. Also, happy Victoria Day to everyone in this part of the world on this line on the border line on the map there. My name is Matthew, and I am coming to you from Underworld North Studio in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. As always, I am joined from across the continent by your friend of mine, Mr. Joel Davis. Joel, how are you doing this week?
How am I doing? I've given up all chance at inner peace. I've made my mind to sunless space. I share my dreams with Ghost. Actually, I'm doing fine. Although there's a plane up above me.
Yeah, I may have found love in a hopeless place. That's the rhyme there. Andor's over. First off, we'll get to guest folks on the screen. You can see it's Ellie from Daughters of Ferrix. Welcome back to the podcast. How's it going?
Oh, it's going just fine. I'm very pleased to be a week out from Andor. I feel like I've almost caught up on sleep again. So
yes,
I definitely caught up on sleep this past long weekend. I'm happy about that. But Andor is over. And yes, we are crying, even though we're also smiling because it happened. The series wrapped up doing what it does best. Character-focused story that shows how incredibly realized people live and fight in a galaxy overrun by darkness. It also transitions into the next chapter of the rebellion. I wonder what happens next against the Empire in a brilliant way. So this week we break down the final arc of Andor Season 2, the finale. Here we go. First we'll get the quick plugs out of the way. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Threads at Iron Canon Pod, mostly on Blue Sky. Follow Joel's musings and everything going on Blue Sky at Iron Canon, and you can check out everything. Yeah, Ellie will pick up her plugs at the end as well. Check her podcast, Daughters of Ferrix podcast. Great listen. Here on the sorry, catching up. If your audio is more your speed, we got this right up on Spotify and Apple Podcasts right after we record. I'll throw that up, so check that out. Also, we are proudly part of the Star Wars Underworld Podcast Network. Glad this guy is back. We're part of the Underworld Podcast Network. Check out everything is going around in the network, including the flagship and the race side, and we'll get to another show in a second. But first off, on the Discord server, the Star Wars Underworld Discord server, we've got movie nights, we've got game nights. Joel, you want to let us know what kinds of things are going on in the Discord server?
Yes, we will probably be continuing more game nights on Fridays to enjoy the Fortnite Star Wars event as we all unlock our Emperor Palpatine and General Grievous skins. Yes. Ben and I want to do a whole Palpatine squad. Palpatine's clone dreams come true. So that'll be fun. We've also watched some Andor, and we will probably watch some other things in the future.
Yeah, I on the Discord I saw was last night Ben, like 1 a.m, posting Eastern time, posting his Palpatine Fortnite. That was pretty funny. Also here on the Underworld YouTube channel, we have YouTube memberships and super chats. So please do support. We're happy to receive any support you're willing to provide. If you comment down below, we'll get to your comment when we can. If you super chat us, we'll interrupt ourselves mid-sentence to get into that chat. We're grateful again for any support you can provide. Lastly, got to plug my own other show on the network here. It's the Tractor Beam Comics Reviews every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Chris Abbott and I engage the Tractor Beam with the comic books that came out that day, or we're still catching up in this, as the case may be. We're looking at Fear of the Jedi 3 and 4 together, and High Republic Adventures number 18. So got an all High Republic show coming at you. Might even get the Insider issue because I finally got that. So yeah, still an all High Republic show coming at you this Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, because Wednesdays are for comics and comics are for Wednesdays, is how we roll. All right. Before we dive into it, Ellie, I'm going to put you on the spot because this is our first time seeing you before, or after, I should say, after the big Pacific Coast party that happened. And you had a panel up there. Heard it went well. Let us know how Celebration was and how the panel went.
Star Wars Celebration was lovely. It was my third one at this point, where I feel like I was kind of taking a little bit of the pressure off. I did make it to. Did I miss any of the big panels? I missed Visions. I missed the Visions 3 panel because that was when my panel was happening. Couldn't make it to that one, but I made it into all the other ones. That was really pretty easy. I think it was a well-organized venue. That's not important to y'all, but that's important to me.
Good.
And No, I thought it was just like a really good time, really great chance to see a bunch of people. And yeah, our panel went really especially well. We for those unaware, I was up there and did a panel with it's not up yet. Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire author Chris Kempshaw, sort of talking about history as a concept, as a discipline, and doing it through his writing for Star Wars. And I felt like that panel went really well. It was packed wall to wall. I'm getting started. I'm really at the beginning of editing it for wider release, which will come out in a few weeks' time. So it was a great opportunity. I really enjoyed myself. I think it was well worth the effort.
Nice. That's great.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And I'm definitely looking forward to that panel. We will definitely plug it when it is up. Please do let us know. Yeah, I mean, that's right in up our alley too, right? History and so on.
Oh
So
yeah.
I still have to read that book. I still have to finish that book, but
It's pretty good.
it's pretty good. It's
Yeah,
pretty
good.
simple read. No, not simple read. Easy, smooth read. From what I've read of it, it's pretty well written, I should say, by Beaumont Kin.
And I can't wait to see
Yeah.
what Chris Kempshaw has next, especially if
Yeah.
it's wedge related. If it's what I heard.
Yes. There we go.
Oh, almost certainly.
Yes.
Ooh, I have a friend who would love that. He's a big wedge fan.
Yes. I do hope he puts in some Liverpool Football Club references in there. I'm going to ask him for that.
Certainly
we go.
possible.
There we go. You know, league champions. Anyway, all right. Well, thanks for that update. Again, looking forward to that panel when it drops very quickly. We're rolling right through. We want to finish kind of on time here, slightly on time. So we'll roll right through. We got one little bit of news to get to. The where are we here? Where are my notes here? Sequelists rejoice. So yes, Collider has given us an exclusive reveal of the gorgeous cover of Star Wars: The Last Order by Kwame Mabalia. That releases October 21st. I'm gonna bring that up right now. Look at that. That's fantastic. It's designed by Jason Wojtovich with artist Kim Thompson. Absolutely stunning. Just the colors and the patterns. Yes, got the Imperial vibes. Got the First Order vibes, but it kind of, I don't know, maybe it's because my mind is in this channel with this book, but no, in terms of my mind, in terms of just sorry, get on track here. My mind, what I was saying about how he has a great track record with telling Black stories and Black literature. And so this kind of feels a part of the kind of designs I've seen of similar kinds of stories, but YA as well. And Mbalia noted that the flowers are integral to the story somehow. So there you go. Ellie, I don't know if you've seen this cover yet. What do you think of this cover? What do you think of the book? You've heard of it?
I'm very impressed. I will say I wish the it's a nitpick. I wish the typeface was a little better on the cover itself, but the art I think is beautiful. This book itself, I don't mean to go into it expecting too much, but at this point it has been so long since they did sequel adjacent stuff, and we're dealing with post Rise of Skywalker. I'm trying to keep them measured, but I have high expectations, whether that's a good thing or not.
I'm not keeping my expectations measured, especially, I mean, this cover doesn't help. It's so great. So
No.
It's unlike any Star Wars cover I think I've seen. It just with the reds and the square block shapes, and fantastic. So, and I mean, again, Finn, I know I don't want to make too much of a point of this, but it's always been striking. We see, I think race is going to play a part in this book, and how Finn, him and his skin color versus the stormtrooper armor, and Janna, and just the to be part of a racial ethnic minority as part of an imperial system, how that doesn't fit. And so which I think we're gonna probably get to a little bit. I have high hopes for this book, so we'll see. All right, I think we're good to get to the main topic. We're zooming right along. Joel, let's take it away. Bring us home. I'll get this out of the way there. Bring us home in Andor season 2, episodes 10 to 12.
Yep, Andor season 2, episodes 10 to 12. We're here, everybody. We made it. The final 3. What an episode. Lots of feels, lots of emotions. But I think we should all take a little bit of a moment of silence because we lost him. A man, a myth, a legend. That's right. We lost Major Partagas. He calibrated his enthusiasm to the very end. Oh no, I'm kidding.
That was well done.
I know. I can't help myself. I love Partagas. He's my favorite. He's one of my favorite just background characters. I mean, little secondary characters. But no, what an episode. When I think, especially after last week's, which was just so big and bombastic, I even said, you could even probably just end the series now, and more or less, I'd be okay. I know that probably wouldn't be the best, but I would have been happy. But no, I think this was the way to end it, more or less. I think he had to wrap up the Luthen of it all, the Clea of it all, the final loose threads. And of course, make it all go to Rogue One. That's where it's all headed. It's where it's going. Andor is off to the rings of Kafrene by the end, and it really makes you realize that watching this arc, a lot of people are going to be dead in like a week, maybe even less, like 72 to 98 hours or something. Bale, Cassian, a bunch of them. Melchi, K2, very sad. But yeah, what an arc. Ellie, I'll toss it to you. What did you just think overall about this arc, the final arc of Andor? Andrew.
Well, I think, the sort of the shape of this season is you start with kind of this smaller story, having Cassian, in it for the first time in the show. And it is steadily escalating until it comes to this head in block 3. And then it comes back down and it gets really focused and really character, really comes down to this character level, really intimate. I mean, the episode 10 doesn't have Cassian in it entirely, which is, just to focus on, Luthen, but more specifically, Clea. And I think that choice was really interesting. And I think probably correct for this series that started off so intimate.
I agree. I always feel like that's always somewhat been a formula of a lot of these Star Wars shows. I always think about Rebels, where it started on Lothal with this tiny little group of rebels. Then they get into the bigger stuff with Vader, and then the wider alliance, and then it really shrinks back, and it's like now the focus is back on Lothal against Thrawn and Ezra and all that. So I agree. It's a very good way, I think, to do it. Matthew, what about you? What did you think of this arc overall? Just the final arc?
I mean, it definitely had to, like you said, wrap up, like the Luthen and Clea of it all. Sorry, I thought it was a little jarring just to go from Clea being almost a function of Luthen's world. And yes, we get more character for going, but we only get a little bit to then going full on getting all this character, which on its own was fantastic. And Elizabeth Dulau, I mean, her performance is spectacular. Again, keep on remembering, this is her first major on-screen role that she got, which is wild to believe. But yeah, to see, first of all, I mean, to see her actually smile when she sees Luthen kind of putting his wig on and getting ready to go, this love that had developed that we hadn't really seen, and so that was really rich and much deeper than anything Clea had shown before. Also, the transition for Clea as part of this transition in this whole show from the fringe spy Luthen, making the sacrifices, cutting the moral corners, I should say. And seeing Clea's struggle to go to Yavin, just even go to Yavin where it's safer and be part of this wider organized structure, being kind of the cipher for what everyone distrusting Luthen and everything he's up to. Right. Yeah, so that was again really effective. Like you said, going from the small to the big in a much quicker way than, of course, for Cassian, we've seen it over 2 years. So it was surprising that it was just so focused on this other character that had kind of been in the background, but it pulled it off really effectively, really well. And then that ending where everything gets wrapped up and careens towards Rogue One. Yeah, I mean, like it's what what I was saying this last week is actually like channeling your thought about how at some point Star Wars is going to have to Star War. Last week definitely did, right? That's the moment, especially on Yavin with the Force, with Cassian's destiny and all that. And that third episode really pushed it forward in an exciting way, and then really gives, yeah, everyone's saying it reframes Rogue One. I haven't gotten a chance to watch Rogue One again yet, but I need to soon. Yeah, really reframing what's in their minds, what's in Cassian's mind, what does he know and what has he just learned and when has he learned it and all that, which we'll get into. Yeah, so really effective for someone like Tony Gilroy, who claims he doesn't like Star Wars. It's a very this arc especially that last episode is as Star Wars as they get. Last thing I want to point out is the music. All through the series, all through the season, it's gotten more, it's followed this trajectory. It's gotten more and more symphonic, it's gotten more and more orchestral. Therefore, it's gotten more and more like John Williams in his original score. Even the opening theme got more and more like, oh yeah, the rebellion are the heroes, and this more and more heroic, I should say, is a way of putting it. Major key, clear chords that, whenever we go to Yavin, we see X-Wings. I mean, come on, how can you get more Star Wars than that? And so kind of like what Michael Giacchino did with Rogue One, right? With the when we fly into Yavin, we get the Rebel theme there, and just that excitement of, oh yeah, this is this rebellion that we know and love, that has now become the Alliance to the Restore the Republic, as we see. So yeah, lots of things to unpack, but it's hard to finish a show, and this one did it.
Oh, absolutely, I agree. And I think, with Clea, I think focusing on Clea is also as sort of almost a symbol to the rebellion itself, where it's like, I've talked about this before about how it's really interesting. Saw and Luthen are kind of weird mirrors of each other, in that they're almost these fatalistic, as my friend Red would call it, Tolstoy nihilistic individuals who kind of know they're going to die. My friend Red would always say, Luthen would hate living. That would be his hell. Unfortunately. And I think what's interesting with Clea is very much Luthen's protege. It's very, as much as, Jin was Saw's, and Cassian was Luthen's as well. And obviously Cassian's going to die later. But at least of now, they go off to Yavin and kind of become part of the larger communal rebellion, where they for kind of, it's like I said, it's a we are what we grow beyond moment from The Last Jedi, though I like to connect it. Also, I did watch Rogue One, Matthew, and I left at least the first 30 minutes. And one thing I was struck by was just how much this all goes back to the Death Star. This is it. This is when things finally start cooking. Yeah. The Death Star is the key to all this. So, Ellie, I'll toss this one to you. What do you think about focusing not just the arc on Clea from a personal level, but from the plot perspective of, the rebels are going to now see the Death Star. This is it. It's all leading towards that Death Star. What do you think of that?
I think the biggest strength of that is in its execution. I think treating the Death Star, or at least the knowledge of the Death Star, right? It is all about this secret, this little bit of information that truly leaks out. It's just, Dedra gathering emails when she's not supposed to, that gets to that, and then Lonnie getting her email password, and then finally he gets this information, and everything starts to unravel for both the ISB and for the Axis network, or whatever remains of the Axis network. I think that is a really cool and kind of small way to begin it, because the Death Star going from, this now it's this big secret, now it's inflating more and more and more until it is this problem. That's kind of the arc of Rogue One. And so to start it out very tiny, as this inkling, as this rumor, I think is a really cool way to do it. I will say, as much as it was very clear that Andor would do this, they made it explicit that it would be in season 2, the Rogue One show, at least at the very end. And we had that post-credit scene in season 1, As much as people like to talk about Andor as something that is not Star Warsy, as much as people like to claim that Tony Gilroy is not a Star Wars person, Tony Gilroy loves the Star Wars nonsense. He likes to bring in the references. He likes to do the little lore pulls. He wants to do it on his own terms because he's a creative. That's what they all do. But clearly, as soon as you bring, at the very last moment of Andor Season 1, you have the Death Star orb there being built. Whoa, the Narkina doohickeys connect to the Death Star. No, it was always going to be Star Wars. It was always going to be Rogue One. That does not, none of my expectations have been, this is what I knew it would be. I don't think it needed to do this. I think it could have been just about Andor and about this conflict. And I don't think Andor needed to end with go now watch Rogue One on Disney Plus. I don't think that was necessary. And I think it did an okay job at connecting those two things, but I like Rogue One for different reasons than I like Andor. Those are completely different creatures to me. I don't think that one needed to almost lack like a definite ending in service of the other. So they made the choice. It executed just fine, but it is what it is.
Fair. That's fair. One thing though I also found really interesting though, this is kind of more my world building lore stuff, which I was also probably in Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire somewhere, of just realizing how much of the Empire's just job is like, there's two jobs: make Palpatine immortal and build him a Death Star. It's like his two mandates.
Pretty much.
Build me a Death Star and make me immortal. That's his job. And just like how much the resources from Gorman, Jeddah, the I want to say it's called like the Prozac, but that's maybe that's something in real world. I always forget. That's something. It's the
Geonosis.
Geonosis, the Security Act in Season 1 that made
Andor go to jail. P-O-R-D.
Port Act. Different. Port Act, thank you. The Port Act, it's like...
Prozac, Port Act,
Public Order Resentencing Directive.
Yes.
How much of this is just all to go in the Death Star, and it's just like putting all the eggs in the Death Star basket. It's like, dang.
Yeah.
The Empire. Surprised the Empire didn't fall sooner after the first Death Star exploded, because like they wasted it all, man. Dang.
I mean that was Thrawn's point in the novels, at least. That's that's Cassio Tag's point after the Death Star. It's like, what are we doing? Let's go send Star Destroyers up there.
Right. This is a complete waste of resources.
Yeah.
We should not be directing everything we have into this. And the people who are like, this is everything we are. And they're right about that, right? Like the Death Star is this like deeply ideological creation. It doesn't exist for purpose as much as it exists to be big gun to point at enemy planet.
Yeah.
You could just do what the Death Star does with orbital bombardment, but that's not the same. It's about the vibe. It's about the authoritarianism mouthfeel,
It's funny. I was listening to your Gorman episode last week and Sophie was also bringing up the fact, like, why aren't you just using the Navy? And I was thinking, Sophie taking the Thrawn approach of Empire. Getting along. But no, you're right. It's
I mean, it's a metaphor. Right. I mean, that's the thing. It is a metaphor for that totalizing force. And it's kind of like these kids, but I want the big ball. I want to play with the big ball,
he wants his orb.
Orb. I mean, and so I mean it's the metaphor of the more you tighten your fist, the more planets will slip through your fingers. Because if you have this one secret and everything's riding on this one secret, then that secret getting out is again the thing slipping through the fingers, which it does. And we see that in this one, that we see that a bit in Rogue One, but we see it in Rebels. I like your guys' criticism. I get it. I see what you mean in terms of it could have capped off on its own. That is kind of to Joel's point about it did in Arc 3 is kind of, I mean, even then you have to watch Secret Cargo right after that. But I mean, everything is building specifically in season 2 to the Gorman massacre and to Cassian fully committing to Yavin. And so, this arc was more of a denouement, using that classic language, kind of almost an epilogue, almost a transitional epilogue, in the way that, say, the Fakpov story, Antilles, is this interesting transitional epilogue to Rogue One. But I mean, at least that episode, which also helps explain why spend so much time on Luthen and Clea, because you don't have much story to tell for Cassian. You have more story just to give context for Luthen and Clea for their own sake. Maybe that's my concern. I guess we're kind of nitpicking just because it's such a well-made show, but we're like, why these stories now? Yeah, give Clea. I mean, it does make us look back in retrospect, right, and see, again, the tension between Luthen and Saw and the rest of the Rebel group. I won't even call them part of the Rebel Alliance. And yeah, again, Clea and Jin struggle to become more part of things. And yeah, because with Cassian, we just get more time. Cassian, it seems easier for him. It's this foil. It's a contrast. Then I'm answering my own question here. We get Clea's story to kind of as a foil for Cassian's story. Similar stories picked up as kids, taken in by someone who wants to take on the Empire in different ways. But yeah, I can't see what's her name, mother, Cassian's mom,
Marva?
Marva, her blowing up a bridge on Naboo. But maybe she would. I don't know. She, but
Maybe when
yeah,
she was young.
Yeah. So
I don't know, that old lady spirit of hers. She got it.
So yeah, it's okay. No, go ahead. I'm done.
No. Well, yeah, let's go to Clea. And I will say, I had Star Wars brain when a little bit watching this arc. Like, oh no, are they going to give into the whole? Is she Cassian's sister, and they're going to do the big reveal the whole time? No, they did that for something else. We'll get to that in the end. So yeah, well, let's start with Clea and Luthen's just whole backstory. You know, I thought it was really interesting, but also I guess a little predictable. Of like, oh yeah, he was a former Imperial soldier, in doing something Imperial. I guess it reminded me of Mimban a little bit.
Yeah.
Had that same vibe from Solo. And then I love this moment though, because like it's the first and really only time you see Luthen really vulnerable. Like truly, like he's not our stern spy master. He is like, make it stop. Like he's dealing with really a lot of soldiers actually have to deal with, and he knows that he's done something horrible. And Clea is there because Luthen is massacring her people, essentially. And I don't know if anyone here, by the way, had a chance to read do the behind the scenes videos or get any information.
I've seen some of them, but not all of them.
Okay. Well, I might be interpreting a little bit from the behind the scenes videos because I've watched people talk about them, and it's actually like really interesting. Just the dynamic between the two. Clea is also very shocked and shell shocked about it. And I really do think that it shows a lot of why Luthen kind of feels damned. He doesn't just feel damned because he thinks, oh, the Empire's going to get him. As far as he's concerned, the Empire's ruined him too. He is now, a part of a massacre. He's got blood on his hands. He's never going to wash away. And I think he feels like his soul has been tainted because the Empire tainted it. I thought that was really interesting, and just seeing these two, just in the early years, and just how even Clea, I think even Clea, even behind the scenes stuff, kind of go into this. Like Clea might be even more hardened than Luthen. I mean, she watches those poor people get executed by the stormtroopers. Like she looks at it straight in the eye, which I found was really interesting as well. And I think it just speaks a lot to why they are the way they are. But Ellie, I'll toss it to you. What did you make of Luthen's backstory, and how did it add to your interpretation of the character as we've known him since the start?
Well, I think one of the interesting choices here is that, I mean, very much textually, as much as I am glad that they didn't leave Luthen as a character a complete loose end, the context we get for Luthen's life is entirely through his relevance to Clea and what that means for her life. Granted, we don't know that much, that much information about her either, but she is the POV in those scenes. And we are seeing kind of, these are her memories, at least as far as we can interpret them.
Right.
And, I think I think it was you, Matthew, who drew that parallel between, you have Clea and you have Cassian, and very much, again, the shape of this episode mirrors some of the shape of, the whole show, where you have at the very beginning, you have these like flashbacks interspersed of this kid in unfortunate circumstances, all the way leading to partially through this arc. Clea in a very similar place to where Cassian was last arc. Clea wants to give up. Clea doesn't want to do it anymore. Not so simply, but that's kind of the feeling that she's evoking when she mentions to Cassian, "You wanted to quit, like really recently," and he was like, "Okay, but you told me no." And she kind of learns that from him. And I think because of that, the lesson that we learn from the Clea Luthen flashbacks is this microcosm of, at the very least, the larger story of season 2, which is sort of asking, what does it mean to lead this insurgent life, to lead this deeply political life, where you are reducing yourself to a number, basically. You have to. That's the only way that works. That is what you are choosing to do when you choose to fight back, is you are reducing yourself to a body. And that can be a really important thing. That can be crucial. You can be the steps on the ladder that lead up to the Death Star information getting out, or the other Death Star information getting out, depending on which thing you're watching.
Those
You get to be a
Bothan
part of that.
died.
Right. That is crucial. That is essential for galactic liberation. And it's beautiful, right? We think of the effect that Nemec had upon Cassian, and therefore upon Luke, and therefore on the galaxy. That is amazing. But it's also torturous. It's also miserable. It's also isolating. You are bent by secrecy, is what Luthen said. You stop being able to live a life. And the thing about that is that is horrible. But the thing that season 1 tells us is that is not a choice. The choice that you have is whether or not to make that reduction mean something. You die all at once, giving it for something real, or you are killed slowly over time by this machine. Because it is not you that makes the choice. It is the Empire that has made the choice, therefore taking it away from you. That is what Clea understands that Luthen does not, or at least did not. Because Luthen looks at her when she's still a child and is like, I need to know that you're making a choice. I need to know that you're choosing to blow up this bridge and do insurgency, that it's like an active thing for you. And it isn't for Clea. Clea is this very little girl. She has this absolute, like, measured state of mind for her age, and she knows that it's not a choice. She knows that her rebellion is not an option. It is a given because of the violence that has been done to her. And she knows that. And that is something that Cassian has to learn repeatedly. He learns it at the end of season 1, going, I can't actually run from this. He learns it at the end of season 3, when Bix says, you can't run from this, and leaves. That is what Clea is doing. Clea says, you don't actually get a choice, and that is horrible, and it is demeaning. You are made into a number, but the thing that you can do is you can burn brightly. And that's what Cassian does, and that's what Luthen does. And that is what Clea will do eventually.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've always said the Empire makes its own enemies. It always makes its own enemies.
Absolutely. Well, it needs
the rebels
those enemies to maintain control.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really grateful for Ash's comment about, in both Joel, you and Ash comment about the Gormans and how they knew they were dead. They knew they were done. They saw the writing on the wall, and so they made it as hard as possible for the Empire to take it, and made themselves as loud as possible. You know, the power of martyrdom is what we're getting at. And it's funny because, the thing with Luthen, I mean, part of it, this show questions that reduction. Or at least Luthen seems to be absolute about that reduction. And questions that the extent to which, it can be absolute. The thing with martyrdom is martyrs don't seek out death. It happens to them, just by living authentically and truthfully in their convictions. And so that happen that in a way that happens to incur the consequences, right?
Right.
So, yeah, I'm wondering about that, just because, again, I think the emotional core of the last two arcs, in terms of with it comes to Luthen, is his decline into kind of irrelevance. And here's the odd thing, though, is that it is his attachment. It is irrelevance in the sense that he doesn't believe he can have any kind of meaning in life other than through dying, and not through loving. Because if you're dead, you can love, but sort of like you're dying if it has a purpose.
Mhm.
And so that's the really powerful thing here with Clea, is she's the one who has to pull the plug, and it has to do this daring mission that's risky, going into the Lena So hospital, and
Nice.
under all these guards with one person, has to pull the plug. And it's that attachment to Clea, just like, Anakin's attachment to Luke, that gives his death meaning, right? That brings him back. It's, maybe it's Saw and Jin, although that's harder to see. But this one, yeah, with Cassian and Jin, it's definitely there. That's actually, they're holding each other. Like, there's still an attachment, still a connection, and we know immediately the purpose of it. Finally, Clea pulling the plug, so that Luthen, of course, doesn't get tortured and give up the location of Yavin or whatever.
Mhm.
All the secrets and the reason they need Dedra needs to keep him alive.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's almost in spite of himself, right? He can't continue, can't finish the job. He stabs himself. He can't finish the job. It's hard to be harsh about that, cold about that, but he needs Clea to come in and do it for him. And it's such a heartbreaking moment for her, given now that we see all this setup in these two episodes about their attachment, their connection. And so, yeah, it's, again, taking what the rest of the Rebel Alliance is skeptical of Luthen about, both in terms of his means, but also the why, the purpose behind it.
Mhm.
And with Clea able to carry that forward, and that's what gets her to Yavin, is the fact that actually it isn't useful for her to stay on Coruscant. It isn't meaningful for her to stay on Coruscant, which she actually can live. And then, yes, how she burns up brightly. It isn't a matter of necessarily of longevity, right? A meaningful life isn't necessarily a long life, although that is one way to make it. So our culture assumes it is, or maybe our culture assumes to burn brightly and to give your all in your 20s is how to have a meaningful life. Previous generations thought, oh yeah, to have a long life is a meaningful life, and that there is something to that. But also, having a good death is maybe, Ellie, what you're getting at here, is that Luthen's able to have a good death finally. Just like we know Cassian and Jin will have a good death in a few hours. So
Less than 72 hours. Any response to that, Ellie?
Well, I think you're right, Matthew, to draw
yeah,
to sort of name the way that Luthen refuses to let himself live.
yeah,
Right. You have the line. It's a very subtle thing, but in I believe episode 2 of this season, where Mon and Vel are talking on the mountain, they're talking about Cinta, and Vel is basically saying that, well, I haven't heard from her. Luthen's not connecting me to her.
Yeah.
And Mon's like, that sucks. That's a problem. You should have an issue with that. And Vel is like, well, there's work to be done. And Mon replies, but you have to live in order to do it.
Yeah.
And that is, and that's a lesson that Cassian, I think, to some degree, learns, right? At the very, very, very end of the season, at the end of the show, you have Cassian marching off to go to Kafrene, to go do the Death Star, to all of this shit. And what you see, along with him putting on his belt and putting on Hi, Daisy. And putting on his gun,
Mhm.
the Rogue One gun, not the Clem Andor gun. It's fine. I don't mind. Is him watering his plants.
Yeah.
Is him taking care of his life
Mhm.
and making it meaningful. And that is something that Clea will have to learn. That is what Clea is having to face in the final montage when she is waking up and looking out the window at a new day that she did not want to live to.
Mhm.
That is what she's having to face. And that is something that she will have to learn.
Mhm.
And that's something that Mon is able to keep with Vel in the Alliance. And it's one of Luthen's main failings. Luthen is this guy who is very often right. He was right about Lonnie. He was right to invest his time in so many places. He was right to invest his time in Cassian.
Mhm.
But he's also willing to destroy people, and that is like not sustainable.
Right.
Whether or not that's right or wrong, that's people can't do that for a long time, right? And you have to invest in your people. You have to play the long game. And so you have this lesson that Luthen will not learn because he's dead now, but is now passed on to the people who are after him. For them to figure that out, for them to figure out what that's going to look like. And I expect, frankly, a lot of them are going to live.
I hope so.
I think that's a reasonable expectation beyond, Cassian and Melshi and K2SO and Merrick and Bale.
Right.
By the way, I just want to say about the Burn Brightly thing. I love the line at the very end where Bale and Cassian are talking to one another, and Bale's like, I want to fight the Empire. I want to go down swinging. First off, that is Leia Organa's dad.
Yep.
And that is the man who raised Leia. Heck yeah. But yeah, I mean, even Bale's like, I want to go down swinging. Now, whether or not he does, like, it's the question mark. I mean, because he doesn't really go down swinging so much as he just, oh shoot, he's on Alderaan. But I like to think he tried something.
I mean, they destroy Alderaan because they're funding the Rebel Alliance.
That's true.
So
yeah, he sends Leia.
That's right. That's
he
right.
Sends Leia.
That's his swinging. That's right. So that's good.
And then he goes home to his wife for a bit. Like, we're talking about the difference of a few hours. He was swinging a couple hours ago. He was just in bed.
That's fair.
You can't be swinging all the time. No, but I mean, I wonder if there's a part of Leia later on which is. I'm sure there was a period for her where she expected to die fighting the Empire, and the fact that she doesn't, in some ways, is probably harder to face than the fact that she did, just like Clea before her.
Yeah, here's just a bit of a tangent, an interesting eye on paper moment. That 2015 comic, and in Charles Soule's 2020 comic picks up on it. But yeah, for her to she spends so much time with the rebellion, she forgets where she comes from, and so this whole recovering her Alderaanian identity, because she can actually live on and be Alderaanian again. Yeah, that speaks to that as well. So yeah, maybe kind of dying like that part of her where she comes from, letting that go, learning to live as an Alderaanian.
Yeah. I mean, this is a whole other topic, but I've always said, to me at least, my interpretation is like Leia is almost like the culmination of all the best parts of like all the most important rebels. Like, she got Mon's diplomacy, she got Bale's stuff, she got her mom Breya, she got a little bit of Padme, obviously, and she got even some Saw and Luthen in her, I think, and she's kind of like refined it all and like really kind of culmination of all that. But no, back to Luthen for a second. Another moment I really liked as well is when Cassian's defending Luthen to the rebel council. I like when he says, like, I knew Luthen, the good and the bad. Like, I knew he had problems. And I thought that was a really good moment. I like, it's like, how dare you, you undermine him because of how little you've sacrificed for this rebellion. He probably pointing to the Taurus senator in Jebel. I always forget the Taurus senator's name, but I always remember Jebel.
The senator from Terrace, her name is Senator Pamelo.
Senator Pamelo, thank you.
Sure.
You're from Terrace, Senator Pamela. You should know what the Empire is capable, what Sith empires are capable of. What happened that 5,000 years ago? But no, I really
He
like
wasn't
that moment.
around.
That's okay. That's fair. Maybe you can read your history books. It's Beaumont Kim history book on Terrace. But no, I really like that moment as well. I thought that was a very good defense of Luthen. Of like, yeah, Luthen, we tried to destroy people sometimes. He wasn't always on the straight, but I trust him. But I also love the moment as well in that scene, because there's a little moment where like Draven's like, nope, Cassian, stop with the arguing against the council. Because I think there's a little bit of book push and pull of those moments too, where on the one hand, yes, I mean, obviously we know as the audience, because we watch Star Wars, Luthen's right, there's a Death Star, it's coming. But Draven's also right, because dude, you're compromising security here. This is our operation here. You just can't go Rogue One-ing it every day. Have our poor Tony Gilroy announcer being like, "Hey, this is an unauthorized ship. What's going on?" That was Tony Gilroy, by the way, doing that. And that's great. And I really like that push and pull as well. I'll toss this one to you. What did you think of some of those Yavin moments in Cassian's defense of Luthen and kind of the back and forth you had there?
Well, I think it's interesting that what happens on Yavin, the denouement after the actual climax of this arc, is really shaped. Right. Why does the council at Yavin end up taking Cassian seriously? Why does this information not just brushed aside because they don't like Luthen, et cetera, et cetera? The thing that solves it is the same thing that kind of solves the tension between Luthen's team or Bael's team in episode 9. And that is these really interpersonal connections, right? The Axis network, it's this like is this thing of like this guy gives this money to this guy and it's funded the supplies and whatever. But what it actually is from our perspective as the viewer is these interpersonal relationships and these bonds between soldiers. And Cassian is in the elevator with Mon, and he's like, Luthen knows me. I know Luthen, and I know your cousin Val. I live with her practically. We were on Aldhani. Like these real material connections, these fundamental things that Mon simply can't have with this team that Bael doesn't have this actual like building of, I want to say community, even though it is so sparse for like the early Axis network. Exactly, Red Leader. I have friends everywhere. It's the friends everywhere that gets Lonnie the information in the first place, because he's friends with Hirt and he's friends with the tactical guy that told him about Dedra and all of this stuff. And it is that like social sort of engineering that Cassian is so good at on Gorman, on Coruscant, that he has that Luthen does not. And because you are fostering these connections, you are fostering these interpersonal relationships, that is what it comes down to on Yavin. Draven knows and believes in Cassian because Cassian gets results. Mon Mothma believes in Cassian, but even more so, Cassian looks at her and tells her that this is what Clea said, that Luthen died for this, that Clea wouldn't lie. I think that's what he says to Vel. All of this stuff where it's like, these people. You know that these people are credible. You know that they are willing to give everything for this fight. And it is those interpersonal bonds that end up being the thing that win the day in this specific instance.
Yeah, I mean, even Tivik, right? He's the only one who's going to talk to Cassian, so Cassian's the one who has to go. So yeah, that's definitely. I mean, yeah, rebellions are built on hope. I guess rebellions are also built on love. Like we can say that, or a revolution without dancing is a revolution not worth having. Good old V for Vendetta there. Speaking of Natalie Portman, great film. But also to say though is the fact that just Clea's word isn't enough. That they needed to go to Jeddah. They need to go to Kafrine. They need to go to Jeddah. They need to go to Edu. You need to go to Scarif in order to actually have any kind of proof. But it's also wild that we have a similar parallel to this meeting in Rogue One, where Jin's there and the rest of the Alliance, they don't actually decide to go. But Jin and Cassian and ultimately Radis do end up going anyway. And we get the smirk with Mom Moth that they've left already. So, it maybe that is to your point, that she's happy that they've gone. It is that individual initiative and the connections informally that have formed, despite not having formal authorization to do this, that does end up saving the day in the end. But also to say, just they have to go through all that effort in order to actually have concrete proof, in order then to formulate the plan that we see, of course, in A New Hope with Luke. So that, speaking of also interpersonal connections, right? Luke and Wedge and everything, he has there. So that's a great point. Rebellions built on hope. Rebellions are built on love.
To quote Jay, at the risk of seeming ridiculous, let me say that a true revolutionary is guided by a great feeling of love. It's impossible to think of a genuine revolutionary lacking this quality.
Yes.
The Shay.
And we'll
it's
not
that Malcolm X quote that justice is what love looks like in public.
Yes. It's a great quote.
It's sort of funny. I used to almost jokingly say, Star Wars operates on friendship is magic, or my friends are my power logic, because of Kingdom Hearts fan. And I used to just joke, I'm like, that's how Thrawn's always defeated. He's got all these fancy tactics and graphs, but then it's like, friendship is magic, friends are my power. And it's like, no, actually, that actually is very true. And that's even in Andor. That's how they win. They beat the Empire. So that's very, very true. Let's get into the Empire side of things and talk about our favorite girl boss, gatekeep fascist, Dedra. Oh, she's yes, and Thrawn abused his bodyguards too. Read the old yes, and hell. But yes, let's talk about old Dedra. The last gasp of Dedra Muro. She tried. Oh, she tried, but now there's a whole galaxy out there just waiting to discuss her. I kind of love how Dedra's final fate is. I won't lie, a little bit. But I thought this is definitely where I thought this would go. Where it's like, okay, she did the Gorman, but she lost Cyril. Now she's just back. But she's been obsessed with Luthen since day one. She has been trying to find Luthen, and to quote Luke Skywalker, her overconfidence was her undoing. Because she was like so excited, she finally had him. She finally had Luthen in her crawl. There's the great moment of tension between the two of them in the art gallery. Very cool. See a Gungan skull with Revan Sith Empire marking on it. Very awesome. And then Luthen halfway stabs himself. And, she just freaks out because, like, this was her big moment. And Luthen undid it for her. And it just all goes down from here. To where she's in an ISB cell having the most intense game of Duck Duck Goose with Krennic ever. I'm sorry. I just love that moment of
that's funny.
Boom. And that's so that is so, and that was improvised too, the whole finger on the head thing.
Ben Mendelsohn, what a guy.
I know, it's great. But yeah, Ellie, what did you think of Dedra, this whole arc?
I think where you have this phenomenal scene where Dedra is face to face with Luthen finally, and she is taking it in, and there's this kind of tete-a-tete where they're not actually revealing that they know exactly who the other one is, and it's very it doesn't go on too long. It's very tastefully done. You have this delicious moment where she opens up the suitcase and it's the Star Path unit, and it's like, oh, everything is revealed and all of this stuff, and the show is very much like, this is this moment, finally the climax of all of this Luthen stuff. And what you get is Dedra bungling the job just enough that all of the ways that she has been pushing the system just collapse on top of her. And you have these two characters who are in many ways foils to one another, right? Axis, as this nebulous idea, is like, as Cassian was Cyril's nemesis, Axis is Dedra's.
Mhm.
And so unavoidably, you have these parallels between Dedra and Axis, and the Axis network and the ISB. And the Axis network falls apart as the ISB does. Both of their leaders go down.
Mhm.
And then you have Dedra and Luthen, these characters that are both very often right, but rub their peers kind of the wrong way. They get
Right.
ahead, but maybe their methods aren't whatever. And you have these moments with Dedra as she is further and further into her imprisonment, into her arrest with the ISB, where she gives a tip to Krennic. Oh, she's like, oh, you should go after the assistant. And then here it comes, and he's like, I don't know how to find the assistant. And she's like, oh, the pulse codes. We found this on Steerguard, and we found this on Ferrix. And was it Steerguard? I can't remember. And she is right. She is 100% right. If Dedra had been on the tactical mission to get Clea, she probably would have been there before Cassian. She probably would have gotten Clea. She probably would have found the rest of Axis. But it wasn't her. It was Hirt. It was Krennic. It was them relying on her information to do it. And similarly, in this arc, we get the Alliance that finally buckles, or at least little bits of it do, and allow Luthen to be listened to just a little bit, which saves the day for them. And so you have these two characters that are in many ways serving similar roles to their respective institutions. And the difference is that Dedra is chewed up by the ISB. Dedra is as disposable as it comes. Dedra is, before her death, sent to prison just because, practically. And Luthen is talked about after his death. Granted, they don't like Luthen, but Luthen is too valuable and too right to be ignored in the end. And I think it's that difference that really says where Dedra is at, because the ISB as an institution does not value its people. It values the way it maintains power. It values being healthcare providers and rooting out the sickness. And they don't actually manage to do it. They fail because they aren't actually invested in their own personnel.
Yeah.
I just want to say, by the way, you talked about the downfall of the ISB, and this is my world building lore stuff coming in. I really liked showing how just the positions of power of the Empire are really starting to shake now that the Death Star is near completion. I mean, we're going to see this in Rogue One too. The ISB is kind of going to be on the down slope. Krennic thinks he's going to be on top, but then Tarkin comes in and it's like, nope, my station now. Thank you. And just kind of we're gonna see the ISB is kind of on the way out.
Yeah.
Death Star's about to be on the way out. The Navy's gonna have a brief moment for Vader, and then it's just all gonna come and collapsing down anyway.
You have the power scaling that you get in Rebels, where it starts out with the Grand Inquisitor, and then you get a bunch more, and you get Darth Vader, and you get Thrawn. You have this thing that the Rebels face, where at first they're just a nuisance. And then someone like Dedra Meero starts to take attention to them. And then this is a problem that Partagaz is involved in. And then it's a problem that Krennic is involved in. And then Tarkin, and then Vader, and then the Emperor. And then the Emperor dies. Because that's how far up the chain they've gotten.
Yeah.
That's how big this problem has got. That's how far the disease has spread.
And you have just explained my Andor to Return of the Jedi watch order.
Well, that's Star Wars Explained. There's always a bigger fish graphic.
That too.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a great
but
one.
I've been thinking about that for a while, ever since Andor season 1. So it even works now twice. But yeah, Matthew, I'll toss it to you. What do you think of Dedra?
Well, I think of Partagaz at the end there. It was so perfect having Nemec's voice talking about how tyranny is so unnatural that it requires this constant solidity, this vigilance and rigidity. Rigidity requires vigilance to stay rigid. To stay keep the finger on the forehead. It was great image there. He takes this kind of this rigidity of having people who counteracting what is natural for humans, for people in our world, for human beings, for persons to relate and respect and collaborate with each other, to trust each other. Now we can get into sinful nature and all that theological jargon, but it's all the reason. The reason we can is because what is natural is for us to work together and collaborate. And the ISB is just an example of saying, actually, no, what's natural is for institutions to serve people, to serve persons. And the Empire, the Death Star, is persons at the service of an institution. It flips the order. And with Dedra, she thought that was the right order of things, right? She talks about talking to Luthen about all these folks who are going to piss her off, right? Going to disappoint her, disappointing her by what is actually the right order, of human relations, of our human relationship to institutions. And that's why she puts so much hope in the Empire being that right order, and to see, and that she thinks her service to it will be rewarded. And that's the problem with the Empire, is it doesn't have a great compensation scheme. There's a great incentive scheme. If you serve the Empire well, you may end up, saying you may fire when ready. You may end up on Narkita 5. It's a toss up there, depending on who you're in the room with. And she happens to be in the room with Krennic, and like you're saying, like Ben Mendelsohn, incredible performance. I like Ben Mendelsohn. I like Krennic. Just to put my review hat on, I like Krennic in Andor better than in Rogue One. Frankly, I think he just has so much more meat to chew on, and Ben Mendelsohn shows us what he can do. And it was, it was really symbolic. Even Partagast has, they've given Partagast and Miro, they've given themselves so much over to the Empire, so much that if they failed the Empire, then they failed themselves. And that's the contrast that I think you're getting at, is Luthen may or may not have failed the rebellion. He was at the risk of it, but the rebellion would never say that he's failed us. So he's never said that he's failed himself. They'd say, well, yeah, he's been true to himself, even though it resulted in his death. Back again, the theme of a good death. Whereas Dedra, saying she's failed the Empire, so she failed herself. Partagast failed the Empire, so he's failed himself. We'll see I wonder what Dedra, maybe she gets executed. I was just thinking about, there's only, after this, there's only 4 or 5 more years left in the Empire's life. So maybe if she lasts the next 5 years, maybe she gets out and the New Republic frees her or something. But if there's a moment of conversion possible, that's the thing. We had hoped with Cyril and maybe with Dedra, again, I'm using religious language here, for moments of conversion. And we get it with Cassian, is this whole conversion from the small to the big, from the fringe to the center of the Rebel Alliances, or the wider family, I should say. Clea, again, conversion. With Cyril and Dedra, we don't see that conversion, and so Dedra ending up in limbo, kind of in hell. Of course, Cyril
purgatory.
In purgatory. Well, no, not purgatory, but it's because purgatory is on the way up. But right, in that their obsessiveness, Cyril's obsessiveness for Cassian, Dedra's obsessiveness for Luthen, ends up. I can talk good, I promise. Ends up what eats them alive, and like you said, the Empire just chews them out. So hopefully, again, moments of conversion. We'll hope.
No, I don't think even if Dedra got out and escaped, I feel like Imperial Warlord would be like, you're the one who screwed up the Death Star. We don't want you in our group.
Like say after the Republic, or if she kind of joins the rebellion or something, but
probably would just get thrown in jail again.
If Dedra ends up out of wherever abouts she ended up. If Dedra is freed, then Dedra goes and works for whatever, government functionary pays her best to be a duplicitous snake, or she goes and works for a corporation.
Right.
If
Yeah.
Dedra, as Krennic said, if she's not a rebel spy, she missed her calling.
Yeah.
She's the person responsible for the Gorman massacre.
Right.
If she wanted to get out, she coulda, and she didn't, and she paid the price. And maybe she'll reflect on that, but I don't know if she's capable.
Sure. Yeah. That's probably true. Yeah.
And also, another thing I like about Partagaz's demise, use word we can use so we don't get in trouble with YouTube, is, like you said, the Empire chews out. I don't want to say it's worst or it's best, whatever you want to use those phrases. It's like it's really hard to say. It's like it's like Partagaz seems like a probably competent functionary, evil, but seems like a pretty competent guy.
He's great at it. He's such a good manager.
I know, right? He really is. He really is. Like, that's why I love him. He's like Piet in some ways. For me, he's my Piet for Andor. It's just even the way he's like. I love the moment where he's talking to Krennic about the Death Star. It's like Death Star. What a perverse phrase. It's like even he kind of realizes this is kind of BS, and Krennic has just been floating around doing his Krennic. Like, you were supposed to be ready, and we are moments away. Days, save the sermon for Palpatine. I have a friend who loved that line because it's such a sassy line. But it's like the Empire choose out these competent, good managers for evil, and then what you get stuck with? You get stuck with Krennic. You get stuck with Tarkin. You lose Tarkin. You get Vader, who sometimes is good on the battlefield, but I don't think he's necessarily manager material.
Right, you lose Tarkin, you get like Mahdi or whoever is next. Like
Ozzel.
Yeah, it's just downhill from here.
Well, ultimately, you get Sienna Ray, like a lieutenant commanding a Star Destroyer. And she's great. Sienna's great, but there you go.
I mean, that's something from goes back all the way to Legends from the original Thrawn trilogy. I always loved it, like the idea of like the first Death Star, you lose the seniors, the veterans, the Clone Wars veterans, all the people with good expertise. Then in Endor, you lose like all the up and comers, the bright ones on the Executor. Then when Thrawn comes back, it's like he just stuck with the dregs and the conscripts and the people who don't really want to be here right now. He has to work with that. Even Pelion's the only good one there, competent. Sure. So yeah, it's a really great moment. Just sort of really show just again, I mean, as much as we can say like maybe Andor could have stood on its own, as it connects to Rogue One, really does show like, this is like the last good few moments for the Empire before like they're losing their people, they're losing their Death Star, losing Dedra. It's all downhill from here. Let's see. Let me just see where do I want to go here. We talked about Luthen. Let's talk a little about Cassian. This episode. I think that this episode. Hey, it was nice to see just him, Melshi, and K2 just having some poker night. That was cute. I love that to see some K2 SO moments. And again, I think this episode really comes full circle now. I think Cassian is now. I mean, he does have like one more push, I guess, in Rogue One, but he really has developed from the guy who's kind of shady, but he's kind of well known in his community. He's kind of like, oh, that Cassian. Who did he owe money to this week? To, rebel captain of intelligence of the Rebel Alliance, and just kind of show, kind of as a gatherer, the messenger. He's trying to get He's literally sending a message to the rebel forces, on Yavin. But actually, I'm gonna toss this question out to you, Matthew, because I was curious about that. What's your Ion Canon animation Rogue One Rebels blinkers going when you saw Mon and Saw talking to each other? Except Saw wasn't the big head this time, with just the normal sized body, and totally not on Jeddah, even though we all know you're on Jeddah, Saw. What do you make of that moment?
I mean, in terms of canon connect, I don't know where. I mean, the similar thing with Bail not being on Adelon. He's on Coruscant. So I don't know. I mean, well, I guess kind of what you're asking then is, in the name of the rebellion, right? I mean, that's Saw also being like Luthen, off the beaten path. Still, it's
Sniffing the
fascinating.
Rhydonium.
Yeah, stuff that I don't. Still in context, still in cahoots a little bit, but clearly by this point, things have soured, and it's but things have soured, and they. Well, it definitely. I mean, again, I'm thinking in terms of Rogue One, how things are so dire with this Death Star possibility that they have to trust each other. They have to say, okay, well, Saw has Bodhi. Mon is sending Jin to go get Bodhi, and all that intelligence. Yeah, it's it's interesting. I was so focused on the story in the moment, though, that I was like, oh yeah, I wasn't necessarily connecting it to the name of the rebellion, but it's a similar type of moment, right? We just see the other side of it. That Saw and Mon, they're not seeing eye to eye. Again, it's a reminder. This show really. It's funny, you're saying it's really necessary for characters like this, and it's true. You're right, and that's the wild thing. It holds both of these things together. That yes, these kind of characters are necessary. Saw and Luthen are necessary, and yes, there's more to life than blowing stuff up and say sacrificing your own life or degrading your life, reducing your own life to a body and number. And so we see that play out. We see, I mean, everything with Mon Mothma, just the hair and the costume. It's just what she has given up a little bit in that way. She feels more real, more natural there, and that I like she's just more relaxed. I think more herself. You see that with Vel, be able to spend time with Vel more. That, and so that she's finding her life also. She has to leave the Senate in order to find it. Whereas Saw is still doing his thing on Jeddah, blowing stuff up.
I love the little moment in the epilogue where Mon and Vel are with the troops. It's like, oh, that is so cute. That's very Lost Stars vibe. Where it's like, what is the chancellor of the future chancellor talking to the soldiers? Like, oh no, she always seems like she always did that. So that's nice to know. It's like,
right, you're talking about Thane and his very inebriated moment.
Yeah. Doesn't she like vomit on her clothes or something?
Yeah, he threw up on her shoes, which whomst among us.
That's true. That's true. Let's get to some comments before we continue. I think Matthew, you wanted to get which one did you want to start with?
Red getting into the ISB.
Sorry that the comments are so big, Elliot. Your face gets covered.
Let's see if I can like change something up here. Nope, that's all gone. We're all gone now.
Never mind.
Sorry.
I love that Dedra's undone by her inability to not have her feats known. She really is Luthen's opposite. Luthen knows that people will not know about him, and it is important. She needs recognition. That's very true. I like to think that deep down that Mon tries to get Luthen somewhere in the New Republic history books, at least a little bit. I feel like she would.
And once again, it's Dedra really giving herself over to the Empire, and therefore she's failed the Empire because she's failed the Empire. Therefore, she's failed herself. Oddly enough, the ISB itself, Red Point, is not capable of really serving the Empire. Rebel intelligence. They really supporting themselves fully to the cause and the organization. I mean, it is fascinating with Cassian having gone from the time the moment he has to get permission to leave is the day he's gone to he's getting permission, except permission to go to the Ring of Kafrene. He doesn't get permission to go to Edu and Jeddah or go to Scarif, especially. He does get permission to go to Edu, but it definitely, I mean, that's the thing about the Empire overall is, like you guys are saying, that it isn't actually, here's the word, isn't actually a meritocracy. It's basically
a palpatocracy.
It's I mean, there's a kind of a concept I think about in terms of just daily work of managing managers, and that's just part of being in an organization, right? You got to make sure you're looking good to your supervisor and your supervisor, etc. And there are normal parts of that. With the Empire, that's the entire game, right? It's what you look like, what kind of credit you get, what kind of credit you take. I mean, even watching Secret Cargo and how Governor, what's her name?
Governor Price?
Governor Price, yeah, her. I blank on names all the time. It's the thing. Governor Price goes to Thrawn, allow me the honor of silencing her. You know, that kind of thing. It's entirely just taking an opportunity for her advancement, and she's not able to silence her, right? That whole, it's a snake that eats its own tail. And yeah, that, I mean, the ISB, I don't know if it's the tail or if it's the teeth or what in this metaphor, but yeah, it's, I mean, that's the thing. It's a metaphor. It's not a metaphor. It's a synecdoche of the wider organization and of the wider, just the Imperial Navy, and the way it just they get in each other's way a lot, especially something so labyrinthine Byzantine as intelligence. Yeah, you get even 3PO is resistance intelligence later on. So
what a promotion there. Speaking of which, Dedra had to get a promotion, and she and Cyril wanted rewarded. It's what she says. She says to him before he leaves, "We can go home. We'll be rewarded."
Yes, not a good incentive program.
No. Daisy says, whenever Dedra ends up, one wonders when she'll finally have a uniform that isn't white. She did a bit of a fashion diversity. Like, yeah.
She's got a black blouse in that apartment.
That's true. Dedra and Miro get the job selling mantle mix because the New Republic can't identify her once they liberate Narkina 2. Oh, that's a good one.
She'd be better off running like a little mini mart somewhere.
Yeah.
I think it'd be good for her. Get a real job, you know?
Yeah. She can run it her way, you know, have her own little mini business empire.
There we go.
Yeah, real work.
Exactly. All right. Let's see. I think we'll just focus on the kind of the ending, as I feel like we covered most of the arc itself. There was lots of tension in the arc. Very good tension. I was so terrified for Clea. Like, I wanted Clea to live. Like, don't die. I was very scared for like several moments. I was even scared when she was alone. I thought, like, don't leave her alone. I don't know what she's gonna do. She learned from losing. I love the moment where she and Vel get together.
Yeah.
Like that was a great little moment where Vel just kind of like wraps her in like the little jacket and like just helps her out. I think that was cool because, you know, obviously Vel's not been happy with Luthen for some valid reasons, unfortunately. But it's nice that, you know, Vel shows that kindness to Clea. You know, Vel's got her own complicated feelings for Luthen.
The prodigal daughter kind of thing.
Yeah.
This is a really interesting moment. Sorry, go ahead.
But no, that was great. And you know, the ending itself. I am surprised. I guess I was more surprised by how many people made it out than I thought. You know, I wish more people had. You know, but you know, Wilmond, he's okay. Wilmond's Gorman friend is okay too. His girlfriend. She's there. You know, obviously, you know, Vel made it out. Clea's gonna be making it out, and Bix made it out, and has a special little somebody with her. B2 Emo is okay, everyone. He is okay, and he has a little friend. That made my heart real good. It's like that's whose happiness I need to know. I just need to know B2 Emo is okay, right? Like the rest of the galaxy, but B2 Emo is like, I need to know he's happy. He's happy and okay. And I just love. I do. As much, you know, we talked about the Rogue One of it all. I do kind of like the final moment of just, you know, Cassian's been on this journey. He has gathered all these people. He has become a messenger. And I love like the moment when he and the Force healer I mean, I guess it's Force user technically. Look at each other and like she kind of knows. She knows like, oh, you're going into Rogue One, aren't you? I've seen the Star Wars.
There we go.
But no, it's like no, you're going to your destiny. And then the door closes, and I will say, you know, it's as much as it's a cliche, the moment with Bix, I do like though. It is interesting that I always forget if this is the final scene or if it's the door closing. I always forget now because I've only seen this once. Do you see that bright light? And I think that's a really interesting choice because again, that's what Cassian's final moments are, of that bright light of the Death Star nuke coming towards him. And I thought that was a really interesting choice of like these two bright lights looking at one another. I just thought that was just an interesting creative choice. But I'll toss it to you. What are your thoughts on kind of like the final moments of the show, and were you surprised by the people who did make it out? How there are, I mean, not loose ends, but there's definitely a wide range of stories to tell, not in terms of spin-off, but just in terms of like, oh, look, these people are okay. I'm glad. Wish more work.
Well, I think it would have been a mistake for this show to kill all of its characters. I think a lot of people were very confident that everyone in the show would die, and I think that's, I think it is genuinely bad storytelling to assume that the only thing that can happen to people, even in wartime, is death. I think that is careless, honestly. And so I am glad that you had these character moments where it is like these people's lives go on. Vel is eating breakfast, Clea is waking up. I think that's essential. And even, you know, someone like Perrin, his life goes on and it kind of sucks. And you know, I'm also very, very glad that, you know, Bix made it out of this show. I think it was very much the right decision to cap off all of the, okay, now go watch Rogue One stuff with, Bix. Bix is around. B2EMO is still around. I think that's very nice. You kind of get this little heart of community at the end of it. I don't love what they actually did. I don't think that, I think the decision not to make Bix as a person exist really at all in that last scene. I don't think that's especially interesting story writing, let alone responsible. You know, I think for a character who isn't present in the arc at all, who spent all of last arc thinking, oh, what should I do for Cassian? I think a character that started off kind of very much adjacent to Cassian's story as someone in his life, but, you know, her life didn't revolve around him. I think there are lots of ways in which Andor Season 2 has reduced Bix as a character that I think are, not to overstate it, kind of a travesty. But I do really love that Andor was willing not to end with, you know, hey, Cassian, cool guy, gonna go do Death Star stuff. But no, that there is something else, that there is something more, that this is all for a purpose. That is very important. The future of it all is very important. So I'm glad that they made that choice.
I agree. You know, we talked about how we felt. We also agree with Bix. We also very, and also I wasn't being subtle about it. I was also talking about Cinta, when it's like, wow, I wish more people had lived. It's like, man. But no,
That'd be nice.
That would have been that would have been nice. I brought that up when that episode hit. But no, I agree, and you know, it's definitely one of those things where I am curious about the future, not in terms of like, ooh, how many spin-offs can we get out of this? Although that is something I am curious about. Like, I am kind of like knowing that Cassian's impact on the galaxy is not just going to be simply, oh, he got the Death Star planted and then he died. Like, no, he saved Clea. He gave Clea a future. Bix got a future. Vel has a future. You know, Wilmont has a future. And the Gorman girlfriend. What's the name of his Gorman girlfriend? I feel bad.
Drina. Her name is Drina.
Thank you. Drina has a future. You know, probably telling the galaxy about the tragedy of Gorman. And I'm excited to, in my very nerdy way, like to start seeing implementation of
Sure.
that stuff into the lore. The same way Kieran Gillen's comics implemented a lot of Rogue One stuff when we got those comics back in the day. That's why I got the Hope Dies arc, which is my favorite thing. But Matthew, what are your thoughts on the final moments of the arc overall?
I mean, the theme of burning brightly is definitely a powerful moment. Yeah, we'll get to Bix in a moment, but
right,
yeah, the burning brightly, and it was a very powerful image, right? Just like it is at the end of Rogue One, a very powerful image. That again, Luthen saying, that the things that the rebellion is make it so that the rebellion is making it so that whatever the Empire does is loud and terrible, and exposes the darkness. Shining a light that exposes the darkness. So, yeah, a really, really meaningful moments there. With Bix, I'm of two minds, heart and feel, especially, that she turns into a baby factory at the end, a little bit. And the fact that she's used in this season just enough to know, we could have gotten way more. I think last week we talked about how part of that's just a result of the structure of just having the year gaps, and that's the thing with Bix, is where we feel the year gaps the most. Is a lot could have gone on in that year that we don't have, and so it's not part of the story we have. It's not what's being presented to us as meaningful and normative of a powerful female character for Cassian. Jin we get more of, and so having that in mind. But I like, obviously gonna like the Revenge of the Sith callback, with Luke and Owen and Beru on the hill there. That I'm gonna enjoy. Today is Revenge of the Sith at 20 day. Just thinking about that, but
is it really?
Yeah, I believe so.
Wow.
Yeah. And so the note of, like you're saying, that there's hope that Cassian's life has meaning even past his death, and that is an important theme in Star Wars when it comes to biological children, for example. Is that is one way in which your life can. That Star Wars does explore that. It does. One way for your life to have meaning past your death. It's not the only way, obviously. I do get. I think maybe Ash was saying this. Was helping me see this, and Joel, maybe you too. Might have been Dom. Somebody trying to give credit where credit's due. How Andor is about a war story. It's a spy story, and how Bix is going on a different path. She's pursuing force sensitivity. She's pursuing, maybe choosing to pursue domesticity, because a woman can choose that if she wants. And so needs to be safe, and everything she experienced on Ferrix with the torture. She's earned her time in the sun, and so because this is an unsafe story, very dangerous story, she needs to go off and do something else. I just don't know if that needed to be her story. That's the thing. I wanted her to be more a part of it. Again, I wanted her to go to Gorman with Cassian. I wanted her to be more involved there, but hopefully we're gonna get more material. But that's kind of the big maybe knock of this show is with
Well, and
Bix,
I mean,
but go ahead.
one of the key themes, at least throughout season 1, was that you can't run from it, right?
Yeah.
Cassian's like, we can find a quiet place. No, you can't.
Mhm.
That was what Marva was saying. No,
Yeah.
you can't. That's what happened to him on Neamos. He went to the beach planet to go hang out on the beach, and he got arrested.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
as much as wonderful as it would be for people to be able to find safety, to find quiet, that doesn't exist. And, in many ways, Cassian buys that for everybody who comes after, just like Clea does and Luthen does and Jin does and Luke does. Everybody does. But pregnant women have been in perilous situations for time immemorial. Pregnant women endure war and famine and threat every single day. And is it painful and difficult? Absolutely. But it's not. They do it plenty,
including in Star Wars.
Giving
including in
birth
Star
is
Wars.
painful and deadly, especially if you don't have
Giving birth is painful, but the thing about that is that just because you are pregnant does not mean that you stop living a life, and it does not mean that your life stops being in the context of war. And what that looks like might not be that different from what it looks like for the men who are actually on screen. And the choice, I mean, it is absolutely, I totally agree with you, Matthew, that is probably a consequence of the fact that they cut this show from 5 seasons into 2.
Yeah.
That too, yeah.
But when the consequence to cutting your show from 5 seasons to 2 is the killing and then sidelining of your 2 women of color main characters, that's not great.
No.
That's not good. I mean, yeah, I agree. I mean, like, it's one thing if, like, I don't see the formation of the Yavin base. That's fine. I don't care. I mean, I do care, but that's me.
Yeah.
I care a little
bit. We kind of see it a little bit. We see it through Cassian's eyes a little bit.
I mean, that's fair. You know. I care, but, you know, it's like...
Yeah.
Yeah, but, you know, Vel and Bix and Cinta, like, you know,
yeah.
So where you got to put 10 to 11 carries.
I mean, shoot, Leia in the Battle of Jakku. I kind of joke that one of my favorite cameos in the Battle of Jakku comics is Ben Solo. But Leia in the Battle of Jakku. She's kicking butt, taking names. Pekka Adren in Battle of Variadu, which I haven't.
Legends too. She was pregnant with Jane and Jason getting hunted down by the Nogri.
Yeah.
The Dark Empire comic, she's facing off against Luke and Darkseid Luke and the Emperor. They draw her with a little baby belly, so she's got a lightsaber. She's fighting the Emperor. So
this is an interesting point. I want to address this. I mean, having children, obviously. I mean, it also the Death Star plans. Getting that's also a big deal. But I guess
I mean,
the kid. Yeah,
I totally sympathize with this. I just want to say because listen, Cassian is survived by Bix.
Yeah.
They lived together for years. They were pretend married for years. She is his legacy because of their relationship.
Yeah.
And that doesn't have to be anything else. That doesn't have to be a kid that the show didn't invest time into like earning.
Yeah.
Like that could have been really, really special because Andor in many ways started with Cassian, but it also started with Bix. It started with Marva. And to have that moving on, I think would be really beautiful.
Yeah.
And, you know, hypothetically, it is still like that, but it is instead a little bit colored by this other choice.
It's just thinking about Jason Syndulla by contrast. Jason Syndulla feels so much more meaningful because we got Kanan and Hera so much. We got everything that Kanan is about and everything that Hera is about. And
also,
so
can I just say, just to interrupt for a second, it also feels like Hera brought Jason Syndulla along in the battle, even though he's like a little 3-year-old.
That's true, right? Or whatever, you know. It just, you know, that Jason is part of Hera's legacy. I mean, Luke is part of Anakin and Padme's legacy, but you know, a pointer to something much bigger. And so there. I mean, none of us are denying that birth children are a bad thing, but they're not the only thing, right? We are all 3 of us are birth children. I would assume.
Allegedly.
You don't know.
Yeah.
Dun.
Yeah, I'm fairly sure. But to say again, for a show that comes out in 2025 to kill off the queer woman of color and to consign Dedra to not Dedra, Bix to a corner. Again, the few drawbacks. Otherwise, amazingly executed series. Perfect.
Yeah, it's a good show.
Series.
Yeah. I guess to kind of just final questions. Now that we gotta talk about this. So now that Andor is complete, good final 2 seasons. I guess I'll just ask, you know, where do you stand with the show? Where do you stand with it as a part of this wacky space universe with the evil Muppet, with the evil wizard and the good Muppets and the Jar Jars going Misa Wisa, and
Sure.
just how it all, how this all fits as part of this grand tapestry we call the Star Wars. Ellie, I'll toss it to you. Kind of that question.
I think Andor is really, really strong. I think especially its first season was gangbusters. I think the second season, personally, in my opinion, was rushed. I think it had a lot of really cool things that it did and said, and was hamstrung by its format. And frankly, the limitations of the people who made it. And I hope what Andor becomes, it doesn't have to be in the next few years, it could be a decade from now, is an invitation for Star Wars to look at that and be like, we want to match that. Because I think that that's what Andor presents. I think the success of Andor, the like enduring passion people have for Andor, turns into that. This like interest in very, very smartly written Star Wars aimed at a 14-year-old audience instead of a 12-year-old one. And I don't think that every Star Wars needs to be Andor. I do think every Star Wars should try to be as good, whatever that looks like for whatever Star Wars, because I think that that is a bar that we should expect from Star Wars. I think Star Wars should try to be as savvy, even if it isn't so interested in those particular types of stories. And that's what I think Andor is and does moving forward, is be like, hey, we had this really good thing that maybe could have been better if there was more of it. What does that mean for stuff moving forward? And I don't know if we're going to get a new Star Wars television show anytime soon. But
we
if
are
that
getting one
ends up happening,
2026. We are getting
fresh, brand new, new title.
Oh, okay. That's what you meant.
Live
Okay.
action.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But perhaps someday when streaming, someone figures out how to make streaming actually profitable, which will never happen, but maybe we see the effects of that, because I think Andor has like planted a flag in the ground, and it says this is a type of Star Wars people really want. This is a side of Star Wars that people have liked for decades that hasn't gotten to shine, and here's what that looks like. And I'm excited to see the kind of repercussions of that if we're talking about moving forward.
I'll ask you this: has Andor made you re-watch or reinterpret any of the older entries any differently? As, you know, like rewatched Andor, like now my version of New Hope has like completely been changed, or it's just the same. It's just not like more reinforced what you kind of already suspected.
My interest, see, I have not rewatched Rogue One since Andor season 2 finished, but I watched Rogue One about a month ago because I knew it would be relevant.
Sure.
And so kind of my experience of it has been less, I'm not as interested in saying, what does Andor say about this Star Wars? I'm a little bit interested in how it like relates to the Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire, because that's my own like little pet thing. But my main interest is what season 2 means for season 1. Is how the depiction of Clea in the final arc reflects on Clea in season 1, is how Marva's legacy is felt later on, is the interplay of these two things. That's been where kind of my attention has been. And I think there is a lot there. I think that is one of the richer things that Andor does, is tries to be this package in and of itself.
That's perfectly valid. That's fair. Matthew, what about you? What are your thoughts on season 2 overall? The show?
Yeah.
Do you like season 2 more than season 1? You know, where is it you and the pantheon of Star Wars, etc., etc.?
I mean, I'd say I enjoyed season 2 more. In part because, look, I mean, my wheelhouse is going to be with the Space Wizards, and then with the politics, the wider politics of it. And so seeing Cassian really get swept up into it meant we were swept up into it as well, yet again. And yeah, that moment that, I mean, with the Senate politics, with everything with Mon Mothma, and bringing it real to, I mean, that's the thing, is the struggle that every Star Wars story has is how to be its own standalone unit and connect to everything else. I think this season we had a real strong eye towards doing both at the same time, and I'd say by and large it succeeded probably better than a lot of other things. Just in the way it told, because that story in itself was the character story for Cassian, right? Saying going from, like we've mentioned, going from the small moments on Ferrix and then on turned out to be Yavin at the final shot, to being part of this bigger rebellion, and then of course the story of the Death Star and all that growth there. Yeah, so definitely the quality. You know, we have a show like Resistance with the Nikto guy getting zapped and BB-8's head popping up, and we have then we have Skeleton Crew, which is live action, is really well good quality with these kids, and then we have Andor with this high quality prestige show. And yeah, I do think, you know, it adds another texture, another layer of storytelling, and yeah, I'm really glad we have it. I'm glad we have something this thoughtful, this serious about the real world. We'll say I do think I need to head out soon, but I'll log off for a second. But the question with connection to Rogue One, I get that. I get your point, Ellie. You know, we want things to be standalone as best they can, like focused on that, and Tony Gilroy does. I think what it does do for me though is plays up the urgency of Rogue One. It plays up the fact that all Cassian knows about Galen Erso is that he's working on the Death Star. That's all he knows. And you know, I didn't think in those terms, because what we know about Galen Erso is that he's Jin's father first, and then also working on the Death Star. And of course, if you've read Catalyst, you know kind of there's different motivations there. But more importantly, with
And then a weird
watchers,
polycule with Krennic and his wife.
sure. But more importantly, yeah, say for Cassian going to Kafrene, you know, of course, that moment on Edu is going to be a conversion moment, that final conversion moment. Of course, he's going to consider pulling the trigger, because again, all he knows about Galen is that he's
Imperial scientist.
Yeah, that he's Imperial scientist who's helping build the super weapon. And so yeah, it's a really you know, again, it continue that the way Rogue One carries the themes forward of Andor. Like, I think it'll be interesting for folks who haven't seen Rogue One to watch Andor and then Rogue One. That same theme of going on the gut, going on the hunch and the personal connection that then leads to the more solid evidence in that moment on Edu when he has Gillen in his scopes. You know, that is almost in a way, that's the thing. This show is leading to that moment the way, I mean, it's obviously leading Force to Scarif, but this show is leading to that moment in his character the way for Mon Mothma was leading to the moment we see in Secret Cargo, just in a more subtle way. So I do think it is really well thought out and thought through in its connections. And also, I mean, we haven't even talked about stuff in the real world this episode, but there wasn't too much, I guess. So this is definitely more fantasy Star Wars, but yeah, for a show that really spoke to, you know, it was probably developed during the first Trump administration, that really spoke to our time and really caught up to speaking to our time, especially in misinformation and deep fakes and whatever narratives get written versus what the narratives are actually, the gulf that Mon Mothma talks about, between the abyss rather between the story we tell and the actual facts. Welcome to 2025. Welcome to 2021. You know, or not necessarily 2020. Yeah, well, January 6th, 2021. But welcome to, you know. So, I want Star Wars to be this brazen with it when the tone of the show it matches that, and I think, you know, this was the appropriate tone to be this explicit about what it's saying about the real world. I mean, I always want Star Wars to speak about the real world, but yeah, I mean, maybe that's another thing that I always want Star Wars to go for it in each story's own way. to go for it in its conversations about the real world. But then again, we're going to get Ahsoka, and it's all about the space wizardry. But there might be some things to say. There might be some things to say about real world religions, for example, and faith and belief. So definitely, it's the legacy of its popularity that I do think, if anything, we might have sooner rather than later, is a film that is as, I don't want to say gritty because that's overused, but as thought out and as mature as as Andor was. Because Rogue One itself, it's still more the fun Star Wars adventure. To get maybe a film, maybe.
Oh, we know Bo
Beaumont Kim.
Bo
No.
Willimon.
Bo
No.
Willimon, thank you.
Yeah, Bo
You're better
Willimon.
than I am. Bo Willimon's
Yeah.
working on that Mangled movie, so
Yeah,
Excuse me.
so maybe something like that. Because again, with this release order and just the general move, like you're saying, with streaming not being profitable, box office is profitable, and so that's clearly the direction. You can do a lot more with the show. Season 1 showed what you can do with the show. Season 2 showed what Star Wars can do with a film, being that gritty and that serious.
four films, pretty much.
Or with 4 films, right? There's a
What it
quadrilogy here of 90-minute films. So kind of like Black Mirror are 90-minute films, right? So that's what I hope. I hope some, like, when whoever succeeds Kathy Kennedy, I hope she gives that person has a sit down, like George Lucas had a sit down with her, and says, don't be afraid to take these kinds of swings, because both because it says something meaningful and Star Wars can have an impact in our world, and because people are going to flock to it and have an appetite for it. So you can give the numbers to Bob Iger if you do. So yeah.
I'll just want to go over a few little comments we got, because we got some good ones, and I'll give my final thoughts.
Mhm.
Actually inspired me to replay KOTOR 2. Ooh, that's nice. KOTOR 2 would make an amazing series. Hey, I'm all about Clea and Crea. Let's get those.
Is KOTOR and KOTOR 2, they're kind of that gritty in that.
KOTOR 2 definitely
Gritty,
plays. KOTOR's a little gritty. KOTOR is very dark, and it's kind of
Yeah,
played with some of the ideas of like what the Force is and
sure.
Jedi's places in it. So definitely questions it. KOTOR 1 is very just classical A New Hope, but
Mhm.
with a bit of a different twist on the story and the Vader of it all.
Mhm.
Max does not need an excuse to play KOTOR 2. I feel like she'll find that wherever she needs.
That's fair. That's
Fair.
fair. I mean, hey, Tony Gilroy or somebody must have been a KOTOR fan, because like they put the Revan says Empire logo on the Gungan skull. We got the
It was the props team.
The props teams loved the KOTOR.
Yes.
25,000 years the cotton. It's all
Prop teams had permission to do those things.
That's true.
Certainly.
They had permission.
Buddy Red giving his resistance love. Resistance talked about fashion better than
True.
rebels or even films do. I will die on that hill. We used to
I
talk
don't
about
It does go into
Totally
that.
disagree.
Yeah.
That's true.
Sure.
I talked
But it
to-
does. I do remember from Resistance that goofy moment where the Nikto guy gets zapped and jumps up. But yes, that's true. It does go into some dark moments there too.
Let's see. I had a very real world notes on this arc. Only a vague thing of Clea's excellent flirtation, feeling the risk of Kim Philby cookies. Sacrifice exposure to help save a Soviet agent. Ooh, interesting.
Sure.
Kim Philby was like a British guy, if I remember correctly.
Let's see. What I believe the show didn't address about Rogue One is how the rebellion found out about Galen. No, they did. It was about how Galen had a daughter and she was in prison with another name.
Oh.
Okay.
We couldn't show everything, but also
Go
saw
read the Rebel Files from 2016, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
Reference book.
Yeah. But,
How much of that
this,
is up to date?
yeah.
Oh wait, Draven's alive after Andor? Okay.
I mean, they couldn't show everything, but also, they would have known who Saul was running with.
That's true. Maybe, probably. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Jin was her daughter.
Mhm.
His daughter. Anyway, my final thoughts. So I think I come down on it where I think season 1 is the stronger season overall. I think I do maybe like season 2 just a bit more, but I like it for like the very specific episodes and the moments. Like I love the Gorman episode. I love the Mon Mothma episode. I love seeing Draven, my boy Draven. I love Draven so much. He's so good. So, and I agree. I mean, you can tell that this was made during kind of the transition period of like, okay, we're done with the whole streaming, pumping the streaming money. We're slowing down, just the halt. Maybe, who knows? You can kind of tell that and the strike probably didn't help that much, and the fact that probably genuinely speaking, Tony Gilroy and Diego Luna probably wanted to have lives and didn't want to do this for 10 years. I don't blame them. Have you seen our fandom? But overall, I really do love Andor. I think I love it because of my own Andor to Return of the Jedi watch order, which I've done. Oh, Matthew, you had to go for a little second. Which I'm a big fan of. And yeah, people said that it's probably one of the best Star Wars since Empire. Yeah, probably, maybe. I think in terms of getting more quality of this, like Andor, I don't necessarily mean being gritty or dark, but yeah, just more savvy. Like I think you can do. I mean, I like Skeleton Crew quite a lot, so I think that was pretty much the best version of that kind of story. So you can't do something with the Space Wizards or the Bounty Hunters or the Muppets. And yeah, I hope you're right, Ellie, that maybe not in a year's time, but 10 years time, maybe one of the movies like James Mangold's Dawn of the Jedi, it's got an Andor writer on it. That will be the succession to the legacy of the show. And it's just really good. That's what's more than I can say about that. Yeah, he was an aristocrat or the son of one. Okay, there you go. That's what I bet he read. But yeah, Matthew had to go use the wash, so I will be wrapping up. Maybe he'll come back by the time we get back. I'm finished. So thank you everybody for joining us. Let us know what you thought of the conversation tonight. Comment below. Let us know. Also, please do give this channel a like and subscribe. We are always happy to get those. Ellie, thank you for being on with us for this final. Got anything to plug? What does the future of Daughters of Ferrix look like now that Andor, the show that inspired your podcast, is over?
The future of Daughters of Ferrix is I get to have a normal sleep schedule. No, I'm looking forward to be able to talk about Andor season 2 in retrospect. I think that certainly what I enjoy doing is I like to think a long time about something. I like to do analysis on it, and as something is coming out is not the best time to do that, in my opinion. That is at least months out. So I'm really excited to talk about that. I've started. It's not story analysis, but I've started a project around Andor season 2 and all of Andor that I'm really looking forward to when that comes to a head, probably in a couple of months. Immediately, I mean, I need to finish our last Andor episode, and then I'm doing our Star Wars Celebration panel. So it's gonna be there's a lot to talk about still, no matter that the thing is done coming out. No, the fun part is when it is out. The fun part is when you get to actually talk about it in perpetuity. That's when Star Wars becomes Star Wars, and I'm looking forward to that. So you can find my stuff under Daughters of Ferrix. We're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, we're on other podcast platforms. You can find the show at Ferrix Pod. I'm at The Letter Bomber mostly everywhere, though I'm most active certain places rather than others.
That is fair. Aiming for 4 hours for your next big video, aren't you?
Give it. Give it a year. We'll see. When I forget how painful it was to edit that thing, and I remember again, I surpass 3 hours 20 minutes is, I believe, how long that creature was.
Hey, the Trans Clones episode is good. I like it. You mentioned the Karen Travers and the old-fashioned Republic comics. I love
yeah, I mean, it was a. I feel triumphant that I finished it and got it out. It was meant to be small. It was meant to be a small project, an easy one to crank out, and then it became a 70-page script. So, what can you do? What the topic deserved.
Don't we love those? Don't we love those? But no, I agree. We are at the Ion Can podcast also looking forward to talking about the High Republic in perpetuity, because we are the home of the High Republic, and the High Republic's about to end in June. So that's gonna be fun for us. You can follow me at JID20234 on Blue Sky, JID20234 on Blue Sky. Let me get the banners up. Of course, you can follow us at the Ion Can Pod. Again, Ion Can Pod, EYEONCNPOD. On Blue Sky. I also posted to this episode on Twitter because I know that Don Ferrix has Twitter and Blue Sky, so I wanted to cover my bases.
We are on Twitter.
Yep. Zitter, or I call it Zitter these days. Yeah. But yeah, so you can follow us there. And next week we are going to be talking about the Senate. And no, we're not talking about Palpatine. We're actually going to be talking about the actual institution of the Republic Senate. But we will, of course, always be talking about Palpatine, because how can we not? All right. Well, I guess Matthew said we can log off without him. So thank you again, Ellie, for joining us. Until next time, everybody, let's blow this thing and head home.